and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and this is a first impressions video of the Fujimi 1/350 scale Imperial Japanese Navy battleship Yamashiro, depicted as she was in 1943, and as you can see this is the premium edition kit. So in the April roundup I did a quick tour of my stash and I was requested to do some first impression videos of a couple of the kits in there, and this is one of them. So before we actually get stuck into the first impressions review of this kit, let's just talk about this ship, because I find the Japanese ships of this period really interesting, and I'll tell you for why. I've always really largely been interested in building model ships from, I guess you'd say, the European theatre of operations, Atlantic, Mediterranean. So German, British ships primarily. It was only recently that I got into Japanese ships and what I guess we'd call the Pacific theatre of operations. And that actually started when Hobby Boss brought out their 1/200 scale Mikasa. Now, I know, before someone leaves me a nice comment, I know that Mikasa was designed and built in Britain. I know she's a British ship. I know all of that stuff. But my point that I'm about to make is, in 1902, the Japanese Navy was having its ships built by other countries. By the time we get to the Second World War, they're building some of the world's most impressive warships, and certainly the largest warships. And as a kid, I did build a model of the Yamato, and I've not really visited Japanese warships since until I did the Mikasa build. What I find fascinating is the intricacy of Japanese ship design, and I think what happened is they weren't held back by the design philosophies of hundreds of years of ship design and development, so they just sort of took some of the best ideas of the ships they'd bought from other countries and applied Japanese thought process, and so you get something that actually looks quite industrial, little girders all the way up the top of it, and it's a very functional looking ship, and you can't say it's pretty, but at the same time it's got some captivation about its look, and I actually think it's quite an eye-catching ship. Not in the same way as Hood has beautiful lines and is designed and spaced out in such a way that she's got an elegance. Not like that, but in a way that sort of captures you and think, actually, this is a serious piece of military hardware. Okay, so that's my first thoughts out of the way. Let's have a look at the kit and get our first impressions. So even with extending my camera pole a little bit, I'm struggling to get all of this in because it's quite a big box. And we've got some nice pictures of the completed model. And we've got some information which is all in Japanese, and we've got the paint shout-outs here and some more information, I'm guessing history, but I don't do Japanese, so I don't really know. And then if we turn this round to the other side, the ends just have the same artwork as the box top. We have some more pictures of the completed build. So this is originally released in 2011 as a plastic kit, and what Fujimi do pretty much every other year is they add something to it and re-release it. And in this is the 2015 release of this kit. It says premium on it. What does that mean? Well, when it came out originally in 2011, they then did some of their own aftermarket parts, so you could buy some photo etch and then you could buy some wooden deck. And what this kit has is it has the photo etch already included, and it has a masking sheet for the decks, so that you can paint the decks, mask it all off, then paint your superstructure and bits, and then peel the masking off and job done. So this one doesn't have the wood decking. I think the 2016-2017 release of this then included the wood deck. Now you can buy the wood deck for this, the Fujimi wood deck. It's very expensive. In the UK, these Fujimi model ships are few and far between, and as a result have quite an inflated price. So I paid about £200 for this, and that I would say is around about a fifth less than its market rate in the UK currently at the time of recording, which is April 2021. And if I wanted to buy the wood deck overlay for this, it's going to set me back another £70. So guess what? We're not going to do that. We're going to paint the deck, which will cost me a lot less in paint. Okay, right, let's have a look inside the box. So inside the box, we have, I'd say there's still some movement, but most of the sprues seem to be packed so that they're not going to move too far in the box. There is space for a bit of damage, but we can see the hull halves, the brass parts, instructions, masking sheets, and then the plastic parts. Let's take this all out and have a proper good look. So let's start off with the instructions. So front cover is black and white. We have a stapled A3 size, quite a large manual. And then as we go through, we've got some photographs of the actual ship, followed by a couple of photographs of the completed model, all in black and white. Then we have a lot of Japanese, but I can work out that that is my paint instructions, and they do have that actually in English, and German. Couldn't tell you what the other languages are, but it doesn't. They're not giving you paint brands particularly. So I think that might be Mr. Hobby colours with the H, but it need a little bit of research to be sure. But yeah, we do have the colours listed by name. Difficult to know what any of the rest of that is. And then we are in the actual build instructions. So we start with step 1. Again, the language is only in Japanese, but we're starting here with the hull halves, telling us to drill out some parts there. Then we've got all of these lovely supports which have a deck support structure on. So they all look very nice. Then we're doing underneath the bow and the rudders and propellers and so on and so forth. And they are shouting out colours as they go. So once you've identified what colours and brand of paint you're going to use, it is being shouted out. So it's all easy enough to follow. Got some polycaps there, not to be glued in place. Then they have you building up the deck. There's all sorts of fittings going on the deck. Vents and life rafts. More fittings on the deck. Lots of deck detail. So it shows you very clearly what's going on, and then it shows you on a sort of a overhead deck view of the positions. So you've got a double check reference. They're nice clear steps actually. They're not overly cluttered. So it's clear what they are. So V15, that all 4 of those parts, and they're going on those locations, and then you can cross-reference that on here. So yeah, all good. Then we have more vents, a lot of vents on here. Anchor chain. Then we're building up the ship's boats. So a number of different types of ship's boats there. And then we're positioning those on the decks along with some hull armament. Not quite sure. I think that might be colours for the life raft, maybe. Then we've got more armament going into the hull, and then we put the deck in. So they're actually asking you to do quite a lot of build-up of the deck before it's put in place. I wouldn't normally build like that, but we'd have to have a look. Then we have building up of the base pedestals. So the ship gets displayed on 2 base pedestals. It says ×2 there. So that's quite nice. Don't have to source any pedestals. Then we've got the ship's aircraft being built. And then the main armament. And we can see that going in. Look how many we've got. We've got some in the middle as well. So 2, 4, 5 main armaments. Then we've got anti-aircraft guns, more armament, and we're starting the superstructure at that point then. Again, nice clear steps all the way through. We've got search lamps and spotting equipment, superstructure, anti-aircraft guns, rangefinders. They look like plastic ladders. So I'm seeing no reference to Etch, so I'm wondering if the Etch gets called out separately and we'll have to cross-reference that. I think that might well be the case. Then we've got more superstructure decks being built up. Mast assembly. These big girder sections, tripod legs, and we can see the positions there. So they do that really well. They show you where it's going and what it should look like. You can get the geometry right. The funnel with all the pipe work, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? Then we've got spotting towers. A, B and C, so 3 different types, and they're being placed on the superstructure, more anti-aircraft guns. That's the catapult for the rear. Japanese persisted in putting catapults and launching aircraft from the back of ships. When initially everyone sort of started there, it made logical sense because you've got space. But it's also the part of the ship with the most pitch and roll, so that's why by the time you get to the Second World War, you see that catapults on British and German and American ships have sort of moved to the middle there, where you've got the least movement. The Japanese never really seem to catch on to that, I don't think. Then we've got the ship's boats going on and a gangway, little crane there. Masts going on towards the end, which sort of makes sense, and putting it on its pedestal, jack staffs. Then we have a little display base legend. And then we've got the sprue part call out. So, how many steps was that? I wasn't paying attention. 21 steps, which doesn't sound like much. If you consider trumpeter instructions, you could probably put at least a 1 in front of that figure. So got the shout outs here for all the different sprues, so quite a few different plastic sprues, and then a couple more pictures at the back end. So that is the instructions. The deck masking is 2 sheets, and it's die cut, so they'll be able to peel off and put them round, and that should be fairly good. They feel fairly thin. Quality looks good. Bit difficult to see in the light, but you know, it just looks like yellow tape. But yeah, it's in lots of sections rather than big section, so it'll be easy to locate and place. That all looks okay. So let's have a look at the photo etch and brass parts before we get onto the kit plastic. And first thing I can tell you is instantly, without opening the packet, I've just taken the staple out. If I flip it over, I can tell instantly that that is Mark 1 designs. It's absolutely how they do it. So, and in fact, as I look at it, I've spotted at the bottom there it says KA models. So yeah, it is Mark 1 designs. So they're not my favourite brand of aftermarket, so this will be quite interesting. So we have a fret which includes the stern deck. We've got the railings there for launching ships, a couple of catapults, and some parts for that. We have brass barrels, which is always very nice. Yeah, they are. I thought for a minute they weren't hollowed out, but they are. We have, right, so fret A, which is railings and ladders. That looks nice. Fret B, so we've got parts there for the smokestack, got incline ladders, propellers there for the aircraft, various braces, life belts, starfish assembly for the mast. That looks like the platforms that we saw for the searchlights being replaced with Etch. A number of hose reels. Not sure what they are. That looks like rivet detail for maybe the main guns. Then fret C, we have more inclined ladders, catapult, crane, davits, watertight doors. Looks like more cranes, and we've got some oars there for the ship's boats. So all the sort of fairly standard stuff you'd expect. There's no, other than those towers for the searchlights, there's no major superstructure replacements there. So let's just have a look. Right, so the first sheet here is the instruction sheet for the deck masking. So we can see that there. So you've got what they've done is they've numbered all the parts on their main sheets, and then they've assembled it and given it numbers so you can put it in the right places. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Then we have very familiar, if you've ever bought a Mark 1 KA set, very familiar instructions. So these won't be the easiest things in the world to follow. So the red line that we can see on there will denote railing positions, and then what they basically do is they use photographs to show you where to put things. So we've got the deck plate there that we saw, and the tracks. That'll be very fiddly. You've got some general photographs there which don't have anything telling you where to put things. Then you've got more photographs, and as you'll see in each photograph, some things are shouted out and other things aren't. So some of it's a bit of guesswork, so it's a bit like Pontos, sort of, we've started you off but you might need to do a bit more work to work it out. And then you get, sometimes they shout them out more than once in different photographs. So there's no instructions on bending or anything like that. Well, there's the rivet detail that we saw, for example. So it needs a lot of cross-referencing with your instruction manual to get that looking right and making sure you don't miss any. So there appears to be some assembly instructions for the more complex parts, which is fair enough, all good and proper. So top of the chimney stack there, it's quite complicated. That looks like quite a complex platform structure. Cranes and catapult, starfish, and then right at the bottom here we've got highlighted in red items that need to be removed because they're going to be replaced with the Etch. So not impossible to work it out. That looks like quite a nice little upgrade. When you consider how much a KA upgrade set is, normally you'd be adding 100, 120, 130 British pounds to your kit. So at £200 we're already saying, well, actually this is looking quite competitive cost-wise compared to buying a £130, £150 Tamiya equivalent and then going out and buying the photo etch. Of course, the question is, do we need the photo etch for the Tamiya? And do we need this photo etch for this? Let's have a look at the parts and take a view. Keep you waiting just a bit longer before we look at the parts. We have this, which is a full, massive colour chart, which I think is probably to scale. Yeah, it says it's to scale, and it gives you, in the top corner there, it gives you the colour shout outs. I'm fairly sure that's Mr. Hobby colours. And then you cross-reference the colour box with the colour on the picture. So a bit like the Great Western, where they had little boxes with different cross-hatching on. This time we've got different boxes with different colours in. It's a very big sheet to tell you the obvious. The deck is deck coloured, the ship is Battleship grey, and the hull is anti-fouling red. Pretty much what it says. I think they could have got away with maybe a slightly smaller sheet. However, it makes a very nice poster for your modelling space, doesn't it? Yeah, lovely. Right, finally been able to get the camera a bit closer because things are getting a bit smaller. Now, anyone who's been following my channel for a little while now will know that I have a real beef with ship models and lack of decals. Not so much with this kit. So, decal sheet. We've got flags. We've got some other markings which may be going around the funnel or markings on some of the major guns. You've got the markings for the aircraft. You've got the depth markings for the ship's hull, and you've got the name shout outs, and we've even got some other markings there which will go on something I've not I need to work out what I didn't spot in the instructions where to put them, particularly. But that's much better than most ship model manufacturers are doing. Now, they actually feel quite thick. They say made in Japan. As you know, as I run my finger over them, I can feel them. They are quite thick, so they've got to take a bit of getting down, but they've put the effort in. You know, it's unforgivable not to put hull markings on a ship, the depth markings. So why people don't bother, I do not know. But yeah, you've got all your basic markings there. Sure, there's probably more markings they could have got on, but that is a much better start than most. But then they've improved that further, and kudos to them for it. We've got a full set of signal flags. Now these are sticky back flags on fairly glossy paper, so you need to matte coat them and what have you. But yeah, you've got signal flags. So that's nice. You can add a little bit of colour to all that grey ship. You just need to work out what you're going to say and where the signal flags go. But yeah, that is much better. Thank you very much, Fujimi. The anchor chain is also in with the decals, and that looks a lot more in scale than most anchor chains. And it's pre-blackened, although there does appear to be a bit of a glisten on it. So it'll need matting down and possibly a wash. But that's a much better chain than most I've seen. And then this, which again is self-adhesive sticker, is your legend for your display stand. Now I quite like this because you've got the ship's name in Japanese, but I think that's the ship's name, and I think that's something else that might even say Fujimi or something like that. So what my thought process is here is to cover that up with the ship's name in English somehow. But yeah, it's really quite nice in the black and gold. It looks a little bit special. So I like that. Well done, Fujimi. That is a good start. So I'm going to show you these parts in reverse order. What I've basically done is taken everything out of the box so that I can put them back in the box in the order they came out. So you'll be seeing all of these in reverse order. So I'm afraid you'll just have to bear with me on that one. So just wanted to show you how these are bagged up. So they're bagged up and then they're stapled up, and there's plenty of bag there to allow you to undo it and flap it back over. Now in this case it doesn't really matter because you've only got one part in there. But when you've got a sprue of multiple parts, you want to be popping it back in the bag for safety. So, right then, the deck. So actually, it's quite a nice, thick piece of plastic. And it's a single piece deck. So quite often this is a separate deck when you've got this step down here. But the stern deck is all part of it. These turntables for the aircraft are so thin actually that I can see the light change with my finger as it goes behind, and it's the same with this edge in here. But you've got the steel deck nicely depicted. You've got the various different hatches nicely raised, and then there's all sorts of little pegs and bits and pieces. And then what's really lovely, and I don't think this is going to show up on camera, but I can just see it in the light. You've not only got the decks laid, butt jointed and staggered as they should be. It's what we'd call a shift pattern. So they've got the shift pattern correct, or at least it looks correct. I don't know whether Japanese ships used a 2 or 3 shift pattern, but that looks better. But there is wood grain. There is wood grain in there, and it is so fine that I can't feel it with my finger. I can just about see it in the light. I don't know whether I can pick that up. Don't think I can, but there is ever so slightly wood grain. Now, whether that's going to show up in the wash or not, I don't know. But that is a very nice touch. Then we've got, as we move down, we've got more moulded in detail lockers and the chocks for the ship's boats. We've got moulded in barbettes, got some spacing there for superstructure, which helps with placement. We've got these little rings, so I'm not quite sure what they are. Might be for placing other parts. And we've got another space for superstructure. And then as we get to the bow, we've got all sorts of pre-moulded on parts there, ready for anchors and bits and pieces. The actual hawse pipe openings are solid though, so they need drilling out, which is strange when they've put so many holes in this that they've not done that. Maybe it's just for strength, I don't know. But yeah, that'll need drilling out. But that is a very, very nice deck. So this is sprue R and it's slide moulded. You can instantly tell if something's slide moulded because not always, but most of the time they have a half round sprue. They have a flat edge on the sprue. So these are all slide moulded parts. So we have some superstructure there at the front. Scuttles would need drilling out. Got ladders on there, which might need to be removed for etch ones. Then we've got this is the large forward section, I believe. Little bit of flash on there. But we've got a nicely rendered deck with ship's chocks. We've got watertight doors with all the various locking mechanisms on, which is very nice, and some other bits and pieces of detail. The eyebrows all look nice over the scuttles there, and some more ladders. Then we've got some very finely moulded. I mean, we actually replaced this with etch, don't we? But the plastic parts are very, very good on their own right. Looks a little bit claggy at this top end, a bit gappy, a bit like we need to clean seams up, but it might be supposed to look like that. I've only got my reading glasses on, so. Then we've got some gun tubs, and again, it's very slight. I'm not sure if you can pick it up, but the steel deck is textured there, which is nice. There's no support ribs around the splinter shields, which is a little disappointing. But otherwise, very nicely done. Okay, display base. So that's two pedestals, which the instructions I noticed said spray brass. I'll be honest, I think they look quite nice in the black, as they are. You can see the swirl of the plastic in them. So they immediately do look plastic, and it may be that you know, spraying them brass is the best solution, but I actually quite like them in the black. There is a little bit of cleanup needed on the parts, so probably painting it's the way forward, but I might prefer black to brass. So the next three sprue are all in the same bag together, and what we've got is an sprue X and Z, and then another sprue X separately. So these were all in one bag. So let's just have a look. So this is all light armament. Some very, very small parts in here. Nicely detailed, but tiny, tiny. The detail on the gun emplacements is really nice, though there's a bit of flash on them. But yeah, nice. Those are the mounts there for the guns. They're quite small and delicate, so they'll look good under paint with the guns on. The guns are separate, which is nice. Means you can paint them up separately and pop them on. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Right, sprue U and sprue V. There's two of these in two separate bags. What we can see on this side is we've got the main armament we've got the upper part there, lower part there. They are slightly different. So of the four, that one doesn't have rangefinder positions. So that's quite interesting. And then we've got some slide moulded parts here. So we've got blast bags, which appear to have like C-clipped so that they'll be adjustable. So there must be some form of assembly that goes in here, because these are actually blank on the inside. So I'm not quite sure how that works. And then we've got these guns here with the flare on, and these are slide moulded, and they're hollowed out, but actually I would say that's the side wall. The difference between the OD and the ID is a little bit thick, so you still want to probably ream that out a little bit, I would think. I might be wrong, but I think that looks a little thick to my eye. And then there's some tiny parts which will go. We've got the vision ports there for the rangefinders, and what looks like a tripod frame for that one there. And then here we've got tiny parts. So we've got winches there which have actually got rope detail moulded into them, which is lovely. We've got lots of mushroom vents, a couple of rangefinders, plastic davits. These look like bases for something. One of them's got very bad sink in it. And we've got some davit motors and some more slide moulded guns, secondary armament, and they are recessed rather than hollowed out. I don't know if you can see that. So they've sort of got an impression in them rather than them being deeply drilled out. The parts are all nice and crisp. There's a nice level of detail on them. These will look all right under paint. Blast bags are moulded onto these ones, but they still have a nice texture to them. So this is sprue J, and we've got mast legs on here, and some of this sort of structure that goes up the side of them with various different openings. And then we've got some superstructure here, which has got a very high level of detail on it. You've got ladders on there, you've got handrails depicted on there. Yeah, that's very nice. Then we've got, I think that's yard arms. They're quite nicely done. Not much in the way of seams. The plastic's quite a hard plastic as well, so they won't be too fragile. That's interesting. I've not seen that before. So we've got mast top here, and the ladder is sort of. Usually they don't put the ladder on, and then it becomes a photo etch part. But they've actually moulded the ladder into that, so you can get a little. If you can see that, there's a texture to it. And then we've got some slab side parts there. I mean, the brackets are basic, that they would have had holes and things drilled in. Whether they get replaced with the etch, I don't know, but you'd expect them to have openings in there. They're quite nicely moulded. There's a little bit of seam on there, so I wouldn't say they were beautifully crisp. They're a little bit soft around the edges. Then we've got some large vents there, and we've got a boat crane, which is nice. And then on the starfish, and we do get that replaced, Again, it's moulded, heavy moulded, but you know that's the limitations of what they do with plastic moulding. Some ejector pin marks on the base of that, whether that gets hidden. I suspect those end ones don't, so a little bit of fill on there. And some more davits. Right, I'm not going to open this one out of the bag, but this is sprucey, and it's all the supports for inside the hull. What is interesting though is some of them, this one here for example, and this one here, have little location lugs on them. So there's obviously some armament or something like that that locates onto there. So that's quite interesting. And then those will be stern and bow strengtheners. So that's well thought out because these bits here are to allow the deck to sit on, so it'll all be very rigid when built. Sprue H. Well, we've got some of the larger parts, so these are all sort of structured deck parts really. We've got this girder feature that's quite prominent at the top of the forward superstructure there. Those could be drilled out actually. At the moment the dimples, which will look alright under wash, but it looks like they're all slightly different depths, and yeah, they just need a little bit extra to make them pop, I think. We've got nice texturing on the decks, and you can see the splinter shields have got the supports, so maybe those other ones we saw aren't supposed to. Yeah, all nice and crisp. There is a lot of sink in this one though, so yeah, I think there is a structure that goes over that which will cover the sink. By the looks of it, those look like location points for some structure, but there is quite a bit of sink under that, so hopefully that'll get covered up. Looks like the observation sort of deck, doesn't it? Rangefinder's got nice detail. All of this deck has got steel deck diamond detail on it. And as we look underneath, there's some ejector pin, quite a lot of ejector pin marks that will need filling. Quite a lot of Mr. Surfacer action needed on these, I think. But you've got some real finesse on some of these small structural sort of girder parts. They really do look the part. Okay, sprue F, and we have the Catapult on here, and that is really quite a nice bit of moulding. It's very, very fine, very, very crisp. We've got the rising sun for the bow there. We've got crane. You can see why we're changing that for photo etch. We've got a number of plastic ladders. Again, we'll be replacing all of those with photo etch. Pyrovanes, they look a little bit lumpy. I've seen better pyrovanes, I think. And then we've got the screws, and again they're a bit chunky as well. The blades are quite thick on those. You'll need to take a sanding stick to them and put an edge on them. And we've got some sink on the propeller shaft supports here. Again, I wouldn't be using these ladders for outside the deck. They're just too toy-like in their detail level. Again, we've got sink on here. There's quite a bit of sink one way or another on these parts. On this, I'm not quite sure what this part is. It looks like trunking, but there's sink all the way along it. There's sink in between all of these ribs on the two rudders. Jackstaffs look okay. The anchors are very fine and very nicely done actually. So There we go, there's the anchors. All the ladders we'll discard. And we do have an option to replace that with Etch, but I actually quite like that as it is. So the Etch will have to have some wow factor to it, I think. Can you see all the sink there? Sink there. Here's the screws. You can see they're quite thick edge on. Right, these 3 sprues are all in the same bag. And just to sort of prove a point, as a result of having multiple sprues in a bag, it's the first time in the kit that we've come across not only a part that's come off the sprue, but a part that's broken. So that has clearly snapped off something. We will find that as we go through, I'm sure. So K, we have the 2 funnel halves, which has ladders running the full length, and the hand grips and some rivet details, so that's quite nice. Then we've got this lovely set of pipe work. Needs some careful cleanup and possibly opening the tops up, but might be a bit difficult given the elliptical shape of them. Then we've got more pipe work there. Funnel cap, which is quite heavy. Some more support beam framework, and some more decks, so bits that will jut out from the structure around the smokestack. Then we have 2 slide moulded plastic. These were the signal lamp platforms. So we replaced these towers with Etch. You can see that even with slide moulding them, they've got issues with how well they've been able to depict that. You can see the lattice work on there is sort of at an angle, so it doesn't quite work. So quite right to replace that with Etch as they can. I can't see where those parts have come from. They appear to have come off the bottom of there. So I've got 3 snapped ends and I've only got 2 parts. Looks like we may have one rolling around in the box possibly then, so we might have lost one. If the gentleman had bought it off, got everything out to wrap it in bubble wrap, we might have lost that. So there you go, they've put 3 sprues together and we've got damaged parts. That's disappointing. Okay, the next 2 are L, and yeah, so ship's boats. Detail's not too bad. It's okay, it's to a good standard. There is some scratch damage to the surface of the hulls because these have been rubbing in the bag for 6 years or so. We've got some ejector pin marks on the inside that will need filling before you can put the slat work on the top. But otherwise, not too bad. Quite a nice level of detail. When painted up, it'll look alright. And they are both the same, those. So you'll be pleased to know I've found that 3rd bit of broken pipework rolling around in the bottom of the box. So I'm just attaching them to a bit of masking tape so we don't lose them. And if I attach that to the sprue, then hopefully at some point in the future when I decide to build this, it'll be noticeable that I have got the parts there. So Sprue E is the smallest sprue in the box, and you know, they're all right. Some bits for the deck there, and I think they look like navigation lights. They're quite nicely done, actually, the navigation lights, but the rest of it's okay. Sprue D predominantly has davits and cranes on, which are nicely done. They've got a relatively good level of detail. Got a couple of smaller ship's boats, and there is like detail on the hull of that to show planking. We've got some gun parts, a bit of trunking. Again, as with the other trunking that we've seen, we've got quite a bit of sink in it. We've got a couple of slab side parts with some form of door in there, and I don't know if that's supposed to be a life jacket or something, a life ring, but it's very heavy if it is. Okay, sprue M is another slide moulded sprue that has superstructure parts. So we've got a slab side here which has got foot irons, hand irons moulded into it. Oops, we have a deck section. Again, it's nicely textured. Got some lockers there, but they don't have anything on, so whether something goes over those, I'm not sure. Nice ladder and some pipework detail on the sides, and scuttles for drilling out. And then we have, it's fairly featureless that, but it's got some scuttles in, and we've got, this is quite an unusual shape for a ship, some of this scalloped insides, but we've got some watertight doors there and some pipe work on there. So yeah, they all looks quite nice. No issues with sink or anything with these bits. Okay, the next bag has two sprues in it. One is the polycaps. Actually, they're very hard. If I compare them to Tamiya ones, these are quite tough. Anyway, we have a set of polycaps, and then we have a clear sprue which has the aircraft on, and we've got two aircraft. Both of them, am I right in that? No, that is one aircraft, I beg your pardon. It's one aircraft which looks like it's a biplane. Yeah, it looks yeah, so it's all clear, so you can paint it up and have nice clear canopy. Not sure why all the rest of the parts need to be clear, but Trumpeter do the same, and I do wonder what the thought process is. Maybe it just makes it cost effective, I don't know. So our last set of plastic sprues are G, I think, and again it's another set of clears. And I've got to be honest, when I first picked them up I thought, why have they done clear breakwaters? But actually they're not. These are the windows for the forward superstructure, so Admiral's Bridge and so on. So I've never seen that done before. I don't think I've seen that before. It's really quite a nice feature, so I quite like that. Then we've got some, well, we've got the searchlights and the searchlight lenses. So the searchlights are all done, so, which means that you can paint the outside of them silver, and then paint them the grey colour, and you'll get that nice silver effect on the inside, sort of mirrored silver effect. So that's always quite nice. And these look like the covers for the ship's boat, so quite why they are in clear. I am not sure, but they have a lovely texture to them. They look quite good. I don't know if we can get the light to show you the texture on those. And there's slats on the lenses of the search lamps. Yeah, it's some quite nice detail on the search lamps. I think they look quite good, quite finely done. Right, interestingly, I just took the two hull halves, which are the last things we need to review, and as I was taking them out of the bag, they both just fell off the sprue. That's a little bit disappointing because I wanted to show you how these attach, because it's quite clever what they do. So I'm going to show you anyway. If you look at the sprue, you can see that it's got these like hooks on, and what they actually do is they mould this with the hull halves connected to these on the inside of the hull, so that when you snip them off, or in this case they fall off, you don't have any issues with marks on the top or marks on the front that you have to clean up. So I think that's really clever. So that's a good little bit of engineering that they do. So on the inside we have an awful lot of location points for stiffeners, and my first thought is, oh gosh, that's going to be a lot of sync. Considering how much sync we've seen in this kit anyway, that worries me quite a bit. But when I turn it over, I can't find any sync whatsoever. So that is quite pleasing. So when I have a look at this, you've got all the steel lines running along this. The weld seams have been put in, which is really nice. And at the bow end, where you'd expect some distortion in the scuttles, there is ever so slightly, but it's not too bad. Not too bad. The hand rungs are quite basic. May want to replace those. Don't think we had those in the Etch, so I might need to get some generic ones. The gauzing cable is nicely depicted. So yeah, not too bad at all, that. What we do have, so we've got this anti-torpedo bulge here, and what they seem to have running through it is the slide moulding seam. So you're going to have to very carefully go in and scrape that off ever so carefully. It's going to be very difficult not to damage the weld seam lines, but it goes all the way under the hull. So that is very nice. We've even got some little rectangular, like escape hatches or something like that underneath. Could be sea chests. Yeah, very nice that we've got all the welding detail on there. And the degauzing cable carries on nicely all the way round the bow. There's no distortion. The shape looks pretty good. As these have just fallen off, let's see what the fit's like. So we have location holes running the full length. Let me see if we can get this together. That's right. It's actually a nice thick piece of plastic, the hull. That's a reassuring little click. Yeah, that goes together okay. So we are going to have a seam that runs slap bang between two welding seams, so it's unlikely we'll be able to preserve those. But the fit is quite good. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. And there we have it. So there we have it. That's the Fujimi kit of the Battleship Yamashiro in 1/350 scale, as she was in 1943, Premier Edition. What are my first impressions? Well, let's remove the word premium and take the whole kit as a whole. The plastic components that you get generally are very nicely done. There's lots and lots of detail there. They've captured the feel of the ship, the look of the ship very well. Some of the moulding is a little bit soft around the edges, and there is a little bit of flash here and there. The most issues actually are around sink. Quite a bit of sink involved. So more clean-up than you'd perhaps expect from a relatively modern model kit. If we compared it to the main players, I would say that the level of detail is pretty much up there with Tamiya in the main. There's some nice slide moulding being done. The quality of the parts is not quite at Tamiya level. The detail around the hull is nice, but there's not quite the finesse on the engineering. Obviously, we're yet to see how it builds up and what the fit is like. I would say it was more closely akin to an Academy kit than a Tamiya kit. But the level of detail is certainly better than you would get in a trumpeter kit, and I think certainly the hull is more accurate, and I suspect it's probably a little bit more accurate throughout. The photo etch that's included is nice, and it's nice that you have it as options where you can use the plastic or you can use the etch. If you think about trumpeter kits, for example, they come with etch that you have to use because it's integral to the build of the kit. Not everyone is competent with etch or wants to be doing etch. Some people want to just build a plastic kit. So I think it's nice that the etch represents in the main additional options to the plastic kit. So that's good. I like the addition of the masking sheet for the deck. So yeah, it will build up to a lovely kit. Is it worth the money? Fujimi kits are hard to come by in the UK, and as such, the price tends to get a little bit inflated. But there is more etch involved in this than there is in, say, a Tamiya kit. So if you were buying a Tamiya kit, you might end up buying the etch, and the etch for ships tends to be very expensive. So all in all, it's a reasonable price. You can certainly buy a kit that's just as nice of a different subject for a lot less money. You'd be expecting to spend about half this on an Academy kit, for example, and for my money would be just as good. So you would then inevitably add some aftermarket stuff on an Academy kit there, which would end up bringing your price up to not that far from this. So it's not massively out. Ships are always more expensive. You've seen the reason why. There's a lot of parts involved. I would certainly say if you really want to build the Yamashiro, or you want to build a Japanese, Battleship, and this comes across your path, and the money's right, and you've got the urge, absolutely go for it. As you can see, it's a lovely kit, and it's going to build up very nice. So, yeah. Downsides to the kit, I think mainly was the sink and a bit more cleanup. There's one aircraft on there, so there must be a hangar. It'd be nice to have a second aircraft. I'm sure they had more than one. I didn't see in the instructions any plan for rigging, and the model photographs shown on the side of the box don't show any rigging. So your only rigging reference really is the box art. So you probably need to, and if you're going to want to use your signal flags, you're going to need to do some rigging. So there's some research to be done. I would say this was a good 8 out of 10 kit. Just to give you a sort of a reference, my Academy Warspite I'll give an 8 out of 10, and Trumpeter's very best kit, their 1350 HMS Hood, which is the very best kit they've ever released, most accurate and a beautiful kit. That is a 9 out of 10. So yeah, it's up there with some of the better kits. Yeah, I hope that was informative and you enjoyed that. Thanks for looking in. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you soon.